coming out.
And then I think we'll start on the left over here.
Yeah, let me just make a couple of opening comments, and then we'll open it up for questions. Thank you for coming out. We're here, obviously, at the Red Cross shelter here that's been set up in the Selmer Community Center. The community that has been hard hit and devastated. The people of this county, once again, this has happened before. There's been a tornado here just a couple years ago, but once again, they're facing what's really just heartbreaking circumstance out there. We've toured. We spent a little time earlier looking at the storm damages and seeing the folks that are out there beginning the cleanup process. And there are a couple things I'll say about it. And I have with me today for potential questions, Patrick Sheehan, our TEMA director, is here. Department of Safety Commissioner, Congressman Kustoff, David Kustoff is here. County Mayor, City Mayor, Colonel Perry at the Highway Patrol. So it's a representation of what's happening out there on the ground, which is a consolidated effort by local law enforcement, by local emergency management, the state, Highway Patrol, all coming together to make sure that the people in this community are seen and that they're being taken care of. But I'll tell you what's really encouraging is what you see going on behind us. Volunteers, nonprofits, churches, the people in this community that come together. In the worst of times, this is when the best of Tennessee shows up, and it's happening right here in McNairy County and frankly all across the state. There have been multiple lives lost across the state, widespread flooding, multiple tornadoes throughout the night, and tornado warnings throughout the day today. And one thing that's important to note is it isn't over. There's continued heavy rain expected with potential tornadoes over the next day or two. And but today, right now in this community, it's heartbreaking, and it's hopeful because of what we see as Tennesseans coming around to take care of the folks here who have lost their homes, lost their loved ones, lost their livelihoods, and yet the process of restoring hope has already begun, and it's encouraging to see out there. So happy to take questions that you might have.
Yeah, forgive me for the half-baked question after 30 minutes of sleep, but I believe I saw that there was federal funding granted for this. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we declared a state of emergency yesterday in anticipation of this storm, and then the president issued an emergency order, an emergency declaration as a result of that request that TEMA made to the federal government, and that begins the process. There will be assessments, there will be analysis about the extent of the damages, and they're still unfolding, so there's a lot of work to do. But yes, the state of emergency was declared, and an emergency order has been declared.
Governor Lee, do we have any updated numbers on injuries or deaths? I mean, I know it's still rescue efforts going on, but do we have any updated numbers?
We don't. We know that there are confirmations of death across the state, but we also know that there are potential other deaths that have not been confirmed. So it's too early to know what the confirmed loss of life is, but there are multiple deaths across the state.
Governor Justin Michaels from the Weather Channel. Tornado threat continues today, continues tomorrow, but after that, the rain threat is going to be ongoing, and when the rain stops, that's when the river flooding will likely start. It takes a little while for that water to trickle down and start to build up in the form of flooding. State resources, state planning ahead of what could potentially be some catastrophic river floods.
Really important that you note that, because while the tornado activity may subside over the next 24 hours, then the flooding begins, or it expands, right? We already have widespread flooding across the state, but the river flooding will clearly follow, and preparation for that's already underway. I might let Patrick Sheehan, director of TEMA, speak to that, and I also want to have Congressman Kustoff come up and speak a little bit to the question about federal assistance. But let me say this. I've had outreach from multiple governors, outreach from the federal government as well, from departments within federal government. Everyone knows this is coming. And we knew that the storms were coming, but everyone knows the flooding is coming. So we have swift water assets and resources coming from other states, from across this state, from East Tennessee all the way out here to West Tennessee. So there's a great deal of preparation been going on. You want to speak to that, Patrick?
Yes, sir. We've worked really hard over the last decade to work with local communities to build swift water rescue capabilities. Those teams have worked with us closely to get credentialed, to make sure their personnel are trained. And we started working with those teams to make sure that they were on standby and ready to mobilize should they be needed in flooding. Similarly, we worked with the Federal Emergency Management Agency to identify which USAR teams, urban search and rescue teams, that are outside of Tennessee. In Tennessee, we have Tennessee Task Force 1 that's primarily headquartered out of Memphis. There are other similar USARs, 28 in total. 2 of those have been identified to potentially support Tennessee. And as the governor was talking about, states support states through the Emergency Management Assistance Compact. It is the state-to-state mutual aid compact, and we've talked to states, every state that surrounds us that's not impacted by the same system, to poll for their readiness to support any swift water or search and rescue requests we might have.
Related to that mutual aid, how many states are serving in mutual aid right now, and how many are on deck?
We have 5 that are ready to support us should we need to pull the trigger on that, and we're constantly evaluating conditions and the need for that.
Which states are able to choose?
Virginia, both Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida. Thank you.
Congressman, you want to make a comment before we take more questions?
Yeah, thank you, Governor. First of all, I want to thank and recognize Governor Lee for his leadership and the fact that he is here so quickly. We were here with County Mayor Smith almost 2 years to the day, when another tornado hit this community. I've been very impressed with the coordination of local leadership with Mayor Sherry Inman and County Mayor Larry Smith, state officials, federal. We have representatives here from Senator Haggerty's office and Senator Blackburn. The entire federal delegation will do what we need to do once all the assessments are made here with damage. I will note the question about flooding is very serious. Again, the governor and I, about a month and a half ago, viewed flooding in Obion County in the community of Reeves. And so we're watching not only Obion County, but other areas that could be affected by flooding. And if I could, Mayor Inman, who was here, I know you've got a number of different power companies from across the region who've come in. What are some of the power companies that have come in to help out?
We have our local Pickwick Electric who has come in and actually worked tirelessly to try to make sure that we have our power outages taken care of across our town, and we've had some other locals that's come as well, but Pickwick Electric is our main source.
Thank you, Governor.
More questions? Yep. Anyone else have a question?
Now, just describe a little bit of, because there are some places that we can't access. There are roads that are still blocked off as rescue efforts continue. Just describe some of what you saw in the devastation that you have been able to see in the community.
Yeah, it's hard to take in. Walking through an apartment complex, overturned cars, people's belongings scattered throughout the fields, the roofs off of the buildings. We know there was loss of life there. It is total devastation. Adjacent to the apartment complex, there was a manufactured home or mobile home park across the hillside. What looks to me to be 15 or 20 homes entirely destroyed, virtually unrecognizable, except for, a few items here and there, playground equipment and children's toys, but the devastation is enormous. And what's most difficult about it is, that those are lives destroyed. In some cases, true life lost, but in other cases, just everything people owned up in trees. The trees themselves that have been, that have been snapped off at the ground show the extent of this storm. It was a very wide tornado, very strong on the ground, and it wiped out everything in its path. So it was a serious storm, and one that obviously devastated everything in its way.
I have a question.
Yep.
Is there enough shelter for the people who were devastated from last night? How can we prepare them for the next round?
There were hundreds of people in the courthouse that I'm aware of last night, and Mayor Smith, you might want to speak to this, but one of the questions I asked was there preparation here? Did the folks know this was coming? And the answer was yes. There were sirens. There were warnings. There were efforts made. That from the state's perspective, TEMA, held news conferences earlier in the day, and we tried to make sure that people all across Tennessee knew that this storm was coming, because we knew it was coming. And the people in this community, in large part, were made aware that there was a serious storm heading this direction. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have this massive devastation through a neighborhood, and yet at this point, hopefully, a relatively few number of lives lost. Now, a life lost is something that we don't discount, and it's tragic and difficult, but relatively few number of lives lost when you see entire neighborhoods that have been wiped out. And I think it was because of the preparation from the local community, local law enforcement, who made sure that people knew. They went into the courthouse in particular. That was one of their shelters last night, hundreds of people in there. And then, as you can see, of course, there's an effort underway to make sure that now, the morning after, the afternoon after, that people will have a more permanent place to stay, albeit temporary, but with food and shelter and showers and supplies. And I will note, again, the encouraging scene of donated supplies out there as people come in needing help, needing food, needing shelter, needing clothing, and it's here for them. Mayor, you want to speak to the preparation that people had in this community at all? Anything beyond that?
Well, our EMA director, he kind of takes care of that for us, but he does a great job in preparing the community and letting them know, what's coming and what they can expect. So that's kind of the way we approach it.
Yep, good. Anything else?
Governor, have you spoken with the president?
I have not spoken with the president, but I have had outreach from cabinet members and his administration, certainly with support, but I have not spoken to the president. All right, well, let me just close by saying what we saw today is heartbreaking and yet hopeful. It's difficult to say it's hopeful when you're walking through a devastated neighborhood, but then when you walk into a shelter like this and you see an outpouring of Tennesseans volunteering to help Tennesseans, and frankly, people from other states and other regions who are coming into this area to provide help and support for those who need it, it's heartening. It's heartbreaking and it's heartening at the same time. And I just want to say to the folks in this community and across communities that are being affected by these storms, you are seen, and there is a great deal of effort all across the state to make sure that we get to those communities that need the help they need. But to the folks that are out there who I saw walk in here and say, how can we help? Where can we volunteer? Is there something we can do? I want to say thank you to Tennesseans for being the volunteers that you are and for making a difference in the lives of those who are walking through some of the worst days of their lives. So thank you all for being out here today. Thanks. coming out.
And then, sir, I think we'll start on the left over here.
Yeah, let me just make a couple of opening comments and then